and our topic is the end time advice for Muslims. And we begin by recalling that Nabi Muhammad ﷺ spoke about the end time, that it will be the time of the greatest trials, fitna, that mankind will experience from the time of Adam alayhi salam until the last day. And therefore the most dangerous of all times is the end time. And therefore the best advice that anyone can get for the end time is to seek protection. To seek protection from the fitna, from the dangers of the end time. And the best protection of all is the protection that Allah gives. And He gives it to this Ummah through the Qur'an. And I begin by quoting Suratul Isra of the Qur'an. And this is what Allah Ta'ala says in Suratul Isra. بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وإذا قرأت القرآن, and when you recite the Qur'an, meaning when you recite the Qur'an correctly, meaning when you recite the Qur'an the way that Allah recited it. Oh, wait a minute. Did Allah ever recite the Qur'an? Huh? When did He recite it? And to whom did He recite it? So we go now to Suratul Qiyamah, and then we return to Suratul Isra. My second quotation from the Qur'an. And in Suratul Qiyamah, Allah speaks to Nabi Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. And He says to him, فَإِذَا قَرَأْنَاهُ فَاتَّبِعْ قُرْآنَهُ. And when I have recited this Qur'an to you, you must follow that way of recitation. Correct me if I'm wrong. No one wants to speak? So, if you recite the Qur'an correctly, meaning if you recite the Qur'an the way Allah recited it to Nabi Muhammad, and then ordered the Prophet to recite it that way, جَعَلْنَا بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَ الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْآخِرَةِ حِجَابًا مَسْتُورًا. The end time is a time in which the world will no longer believe in a hereafter. Do you think the government of the United States of America believes that there is such a thing called sin? Do you believe that the government of Britain believes that there is going to be a judgment day? That those who control power, the politicians, do you believe that the politicians believe that there is heaven and hell? No. The end time is an end time in which mankind will no longer believe in a hereafter. This is the dunya. and they live for the dunya. And all the fitna, all the dangers are dangers connected with the dunya. So Allah says that if you recite the Qur'an the way the Qur'an ought to be recited, then I will place a hijab. Hijab, a curtain, something which separates you. Hijab, بينك وبين الذين لا يؤمنون بالآخرة. And that hijab will separate you from them, from the fitna of Akhir Zaman. And that hijab will be mastur. It will cover you and protect you. And so, this is the beginning of our lecture, and this is the end of our lecture. That the best advice of all for a believer, for a parent, a father and a mother, for your children, for Akhir Zaman, is to seek protection from the fitna of Akhir Zaman. And the way that you seek protection is by reciting the Qur'an. And you must recite the Qur'an the way that Allah recited it. And if you do that, then this Qur'an will protect you. They might want to harm you, but Allah will protect you. They have attacked me. I don't think there's any scholar of Islam in the modern age who has suffered more attacks than I have. And yet, I have survived. I have survived, and there's only one explanation, and that is that Allah has protected me. So then, how did Allah recite the Qur'an? There is a very strange prophecy about Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, about Akhir Zaman. He said that in Akhir Zaman, time will move faster and yet faster. And the whole year will pass like a month. And the whole month like a week. And the whole week like a day. And the whole day like an hour. And the whole hour like the amount of time it takes to kindle a fire. If you perceive time moving faster and yet faster, that is the proof that you don't have protection from the Qur'an. I was in a masjid in Britain a few years ago, and I asked all those present in the masjid, put your hands up. If you perceive time moving faster, everybody put their hand up, except the Imam. So I was about to turn to the Imam to congratulate him. At least he did not have his hand up, when he put his hand up as well. This is the world today in which everybody, illa masha'Allah, everybody perceiving time moving faster and yet faster. But when you recite the Qur'an, the way that the Qur'an ought to be recited, you don't feel time moving faster. You do not perceive time moving faster. I do not perceive time moving faster at all. So this is the proof that you have inside of you. If you perceive time moving faster, you do not have protection from the Qur'an. So it is time to get to work. How do I recite the Qur'an the way that Allah recited it? Since we are a small gathering, and you seem to be a friendly gathering, I can take my time. So we might be here for a little while today. All right. Why has Allah divided the Quran into surahs? An eminent scholar of Britain came to visit Trinidad and wanted to see me. So when he came, I asked him, who separated the Quran into surahs? Who did it? So he said to me, I believe it was done in the time of perhaps Abu Bakr Siddiq. That was his answer. I chose to remain silent. I did not comment. I did not want to embarrass him. In Surah Al-Isra, this is what Allah says. Qur'anan faraknahu. I separated the Qur'an, meaning into surahs. I did it. Litakra'ahu, I did it for the purpose of recitation, not for study. Not for study, for recitation. So Allah divided the Quran into surahs, and He divided it for the purpose of recitation. Now then, Allah sent the Quran to people who think, not just for people who eat durian. Huh? He sent the Quran to people who think. So then why, when He had said, سبعا من المثاني والقرآن الكريم, He separated Surah Al-Fatiha from the rest of the Quran. So anytime you begin to recite the Quran, you always begin with Surah Al-Fatiha, right? So then the first surah of the Quran after the Fatiha is Al-Baqarah. So this is the question now. Why did He put the longest surah of all at the beginning? Question 2. Why are all the long surahs at the beginning of the Quran? Question 3. Why has He given at the end of the Quran short surahs? To find the answer to that question, don't go and ask anybody. No, they won't answer you. You have to think yourself. You have to think yourself. Not only that, but He gives us 6 long surahs. Al-Baqarah, Ali Imran, Al-Nisa, Al-Ma'idah, Al-An'am, Al-A'raf. 6 long surahs. But then he gives us a short surah, Suratul Anfal, and then a long surah, Suratul Tawbah. And Suratul Tawbah does not have Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And since the Qur'an is divided into surahs for the purpose of recitation, not study, recitation. So why 6 long surahs and then a short one and then the one after that without Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim? Does Malaysia still think? Or you only spend your time eating durian? Huh? Does Malaysia still have the capacity to think? Well then, when we think, Allah does wonderful things for us when we think. He says in the Qur'an, he says it 7 times. He repeats it 7 times. That he created the heavens and the earth in 6 days. وَخَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ فِي 6 أَيَّامٍ. 6 days. How many times? 7 times. Maybe more. I've counted 7 already. And this was so important that in the Sharia which came before us, he gave them something called the law of the Sabbath. That on the 7th day, he prohibited them from working. They can pray and they can rest, but they cannot work. In order to commemorate the 6 days of creation. The 6 days of creation, are the foundation of the system of time. And the great trial of Akhirul Zaman is time moving faster and faster. So the commemoration of the 6 days of creation was important because this is the foundation of the system of time. And when part of the Israelite people went fishing on the Sabbath day, you know about that story? Every day of the week, no fish. No fish. But on the Sabbath day, all the fish came. Which surah? Help me, somebody. Which surah? Huh? Who is it? MashaAllah. Suratul A'raf. All right, you don't answer any more questions. And they went fishing. And eventually these people broke away from Rome. Rome is Constantinople. And they came to the West and they created modern Western civilization. And Allah cursed them. And what did he say? Kunu kiradatan khasi'in. Or you don't answer any more questions. Be apes, bandar. Bandar is monkey. Be apes, despise. a human being will always be a human being until Qiyamah, until Judgment Day. Allah will not transform a human being into something else. La tabdila li khalqillah. So we dismiss the view held by some that Allah transformed them into monkeys. We dismiss that. It is in conflict with the Qur'an. So what it indicates is divine anger. Allah cursed these people. Monkeys don't wear clothes. But there's nothing despicable about that. That's their fitrah. But these are a people who will increasingly show a preference for public nakedness. If you go to the shopping malls, you will see where Malaysia is now taking off some of their clothes in the shopping malls and revealing their legs. Not in Kampung, but in the shopping malls. That's the beginning of the curse. That these are people who will eventually live like monkeys, taking off their clothing. Monkeys do their bedroom life in public, but nothing shameful about that. That's their fitrah. But these are people who increasingly show a preference for sexual relations in public. In public. That's a curse. Curse upon them. So this is how important the Sabbath day was. So we who think, we ask the question, if that was so important in that Sharia, where is the Sabbath in this Sharia? What do we have in our Sharia to commemorate the 6 days of creation, which is the foundation of the system of time? This is our answer. If you say that we are wrong, tell us what is right. We say that Allah has given us at the beginning of the Qur'an 6 long surahs, because these 6 surahs represent the 6 days of creation. That's our answer. So today I recited Surah Al-Baqarah. But because I'm writing 3 books at the same time in my old age, I have limited energy. So this morning, before Fajr, I recited half of the surah. Then I had to stop. And then later in the day, I recited before I was able to finish Al-Baqarah. But a young man will do it all at once. So as I recited Surah Al-Baqarah today, I was reliving the first day of creation. And so too for the next 5 days. My heart is beating with the 6 days of creation. So my heart is returning to the system of time that Allah has created. What about the 7th day? Answer, we say the reason why Surah Al-Anfal is short and the surah which comes after Al-Anfal, which is Surah At-Tawbah, it is the only surah of the Qur'an which does not begin with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And that could not be by accident. So why is Al-Anfal short? And why is Tawbah without Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim? Our answer is that Allah has done this to tell us He wants us to combine these two surahs as our juz for the 7th day. And in combining these two surahs as our juz for the 7th day, our Sabbath is the 7th day of the month. Their Sabbath is the 7th day of the week. So when I recite Surah Al-Anfal, and then I join it with Surah At-Tawbah, in my heart, I am commemorating the Sabbath day, thanking Allah for His creation. I never recite the Qur'an without, when I finish my juz, without thanking Allah for this Qur'an. Because He says, this is what He says. He says, وَلَئِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. If you are grateful to me, I'll give you more and more and more. And so this is the way he recited the Qur'an to Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. But it takes an effort to recite the long surahs. So now then, why are the long ones at the beginning and at the end only short surahs? The answer would make you smile. Allah wants you to live with the moon. When the moon is young, He wants you to be strong. Make the best effort. Everything you do the best work at the beginning of the month. And when the month is old and you're tired, and the moon is old, He gives you short surahs. Make it easy for you. The long surahs are like water. When you drink water, you drink, you don't sip. But in Jannah there is wine. And Allah says about that wine, لَذَّةً لِلشَّارِبِينَ. Are you aware of that? Shake your heads. There's wine in Jannah. And you don't get intoxicated. And He says about that wine, لَذَّةً لِلشَّارِبِينَ. Delicious. Delicious for those who drink. But you don't drink wine, you sip. You sip wine. So the long surahs are like water. The short ones are like wine. The long ones you recite quickly. The short ones you take your time slowly. You savor them. Because the short ones you got to penetrate inside. So this is how we recite the Qur'an. I don't have the time to give you the entire 30 parts. But I have a book outside entitled The Qur'an and the Moon. The Qur'an and the Moon. And if you read that book and you recite the Qur'an the way that I have explained in that book, then if you perceive time to be moving faster, then after you recite the whole Qur'an and you khatam the Qur'an every month, then within a short time, you will no longer perceive time moving faster. And when this heart of yours no longer perceive time moving faster, then you don't have worries anymore. لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. No cause for fear. You won't be even afraid of the politicians anymore, like in Bangladesh. And she had to flee from Bangladesh the way the Americans fled from Afghanistan. That's Bangladesh. So when you recite the Quran this way, and you khatam the Quran at the end of every month, then eventually you will no longer perceive time moving faster. But guess what Dajjal has done? And when we don't think, we simply follow what others are doing, and Dajjal takes us for a ride. I have come back to Malaysia after 5 years. 5 years ago, I was here for about 2 months, perhaps. And before that, 3 years. So it made me 8 years ago I left Malaysia. And I've come back to find a Malaysia which is sleeping. Yes, the country is asleep. And I am waiting to see where I can find that part of Malaysia which is awake and which is aware of the dangers of this age. Because this part of Malaysia is sleeping or dancing to every tune that Dajjal plays. And the scholars of Islam perhaps are not warning the people because they don't have the freedom to give the khutbah. They don't have the freedom to give the khutbah in this country. You can arrest me if you want and put me in jail. I'll be happy to go to court one day in Malaysia. I'll be very happy to defend myself on this subject if you dare to arrest me. You do not have the freedom in this country to go for Salatul Jummah and listen to an imam who has the freedom to give the khutbah. Because every khutbah is written in advance and scripted. And you have to be a parrot reciting what is written for you. And so I do not perform Salatul Jummah in this country. And you can take that and put it in your pipe and smoke it if you want. Because that's a bogus khutbah. And I remind you that Islam came to this country, Islam came to the world to bring freedom. To bring freedom. And if you have robbed us of freedom in the house of Allah, the scholars of Islam must protest. So I'm inviting the scholars of Islam in Malaysia to raise their voices to restore freedom in the house of Allah, so that the Khatib can speak in the house of Allah and warn the people. Every single copy of the Qur'an that you pick up today, or I have picked up anywhere in the world, has said at the top that the first Jews, when you see the moon, is until verse 141 of Surah Al-Baqarah. And that is false, that is bogus, that perhaps comes from Dajjal, and it's there in the Qur'an. Who put it there, I don't know. I don't know who put it inside the Qur'an, but it's at the top. And the second juz is from 141 of Al-Baqarah to 252. And the third juz is from 252 in Al-Baqarah to 91 in Ali Imran. And the nonsense continues like that. It's nonsense. If you recite the Qur'an like that, the Qur'an cannot protect you. So you have to give up that nonsense. And when you see the moon on the first day, today was the first day, you recite Al-Fatiha and the whole of Al-Baqarah. How many of you did that today? Put your hands up. 1, 2. Only 2. I told you Malaysia is sleeping. I told you that. So don't invite me to come back to Gallery Raudhah. Don't invite me to come back until you recite in the Qur'an the correct way. On the first day when you see the moon, recite Al-Fatiha and the whole of Al-Baqarah. On the second day, you recite Al-Fatiha and the whole of Ali Imran. On the third day, you recite Al-Fatiha and the whole of Al-Nisa. On the fourth day, you recite Al-Fatiha and the whole of Al-Ma'idah. On the fifth day, you recite Al-Fatiha and the whole of Al-An'am. On the sixth day, you recite Al-Fatiha and the whole of Al-A'raf. And then when the seventh day comes, and you have commemorated the 6 days of creation, this is your Sabbath day. You recite Al-Anfal, and you combine it now with At-Tawbah. So now I have given you the way of Allah and the way of Shaitan. Shaitan took the Qur'an like a piece of cloth. The tailor cuts it into 30 equal parts. So that's what they did. 30 bogus. The Qur'an tells us that the day ends at sunset. The day ends at sunset. Let me repeat it. The day ends at sunset. And the new day begins when the old day ends. Okay. I don't know about Kampung, but check out KLCC. When the 31st day of December comes and reaches midnight, midnight on 31st December, and you hear the fireworks. I don't know whether it's reached Malaysia yet. Has it reached yet? It has? Ready? The fireworks celebrating what? A new year. That new year is, of course, the new year of the sheep and the cattle and the goats and the camels who have nothing in their head but peanuts. And they are following Dajjal. They are dancing to Dajjal's tunes. Because we know that the day ends at sunset. But these idiots say, no, the day that ends at midnight. And this system of time is now universally applicable. Every airline operates with this system of time, that the day ends at midnight and the new day begins at midnight. This is a PhD in stupidness. Yes. The one that Allah has given us is so lovely, because when the day is coming to an end, there's a riot of colors in the sky. The sky is painted in so many colors. And the sun goes down below the sea as a ball of fire. That is the way Allah gives us the end of the day. And these fools give us the day at midnight, where everybody is asleep except Ampang. So be careful. If you are not careful, you're going to end up like them, asleep. A country which is asleep and dancing to every tune that Dajjal plays. And the politicians are the ones who are mainly responsible for ensuring it continues that way. Allah says that the month is determined by the moon. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ. And when they question thee, O Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, about the hilal meaning the crescent moon, the new moon. قُلْ هِيَ مَوَاقِيتُ لِلنَّاسِ. Tell them this is the system of time I have ordained for mankind. That with this you will count the years. لِتَعْلَمُوا عَدَدَ السِّنِينَ. And a month with Allah is from one moon to another. And there are 12 moons in a year. 12. Is it so in Malaysia? 12? You have not changed it. No. 12 moons in a year. Somebody with a PhD in stupidity decided, no. It is not the moon that must be used to make a month. We will do a better job than Allah did. Is that not stupidness? And this fella decided we no longer need the moon to make a month. We no longer need the moon to make a month. We will take a solar year. Oh, really? Oh, but Allah has given us the solar year for the seasons. رِحْلَةَ الشِّتَاءِ وَالصَّيْفِ. The caravans of the summer going to Damascus, the caravans of the winter going to Yemen. The seasons, spring, summer, autumn, winter, that is the solar year. And the farmer and the fisherman, and so on, they go by the seasons. So now then, this fellow with a PhD in stupidity took one solar year and clumsily divided it into 12 stupid parts. Yes. And he said, sometimes I'll give 31 days already. Oh, but our Prophet said that a month has 30 days, except that sometimes it has 29. This is what our Prophet said. And that fellow with his PhD in stupidity, he said, no, a month can have 31 days. Will any Muslim accept that stupidity? Why are you so quiet, Malaysia? Huh? I'm happy I don't have the politicians here, because I won't be speaking softly if the politicians were here. I'll blast them. So sometimes he gave 31 days. And guess why? He gave 31 days because this is for something called Easter. But that's not a part of my civilization. And this is something called Corpus Christi. But this is not a part of my civilization. And he gives some months 31 days. And sometimes he gives a month 28 days. And sometimes 29. And in this way, in a very clumsy way, he divided a solar year into 12 parts. Is there any Muslim who will accept that nonsense and betray Allah and His Messenger and betray the Qur'an? Is there any Muslim who will stop looking for the moon? Huh? I don't know why Malaysia is so silent now. This is the danger of Akhir Zaman, when we have people who have lost the capacity to think. And they follow blindly what comes from others. And they dance to every tune that comes from others. And the price that they pay is that their hearts will perceive time moving faster and yet faster. Because you have left the system of time that Allah has given. And you accepted the PhD, the fellow with PhD in stupidity, the system of time he has given. That's the one you accept. And you're comfortable with it. And you eat your roti canai and go home and sleep. When I recite the Qur'an sometimes, I recite many times, and still I do not get a meaning. And then one day, suddenly, unexpectedly, I will get the meaning. Because the river of knowledge flows at its own speed. And if you are faithful to the Qur'an, then Allah will give you knowledge when He chooses to give you. And He might give it to somebody else, and not you. So you must learn from others as well. So when Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salam was ruling the world from Jerusalem, and the holy state of Israel was the ruling state in the world. He was a king and he was a prophet. Then one day he had what I recognized to have been a vision, ru'ya. And Allah showed him someone sitting on his throne. And the Qur'an described that person as a jasad. But Suleiman is not like Imran. Me, I would take years to recognize. What is the meaning of this vision? But Suleiman, in an instant, this is the wisdom of Suleiman. The prophets of Allah are not like us. So he immediately recognized who was that fellow sitting on the throne and why did Allah put him on the throne. It was a vision, eh? So he responded by making a dua. And Allah accepted his dua. What was the dua? Rabbi habli mulkan la yanbaghi li ahad min ba'di. Grant that none can inherit my kingdom after me. But this is a Khilafah state. This is the only Khilafah state in the world, Holy Israel in Jerusalem. And this is why Allah put mankind on earth. Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa. And yet he prays to Allah that none should inherit my kingdom after me. Meaning, let my kingdom perish. Let it collapse. But I don't want that fella to inherit my kingdom. So who can he be? Sulaiman alayhi salam knows about Dajjal because Allah has taught every prophet about Dajjal. So Sulaiman recognized this man is evil. And this man wants to inherit my kingdom. I don't want that. This is Dajjal. But when we interpret the Qur'an this way, we must always say Allah knows best. Because only Allah can confirm an interpretation. And you must never pick up boxing gloves to fight over an interpretation. Not do that. So now we have come to the conclusion that Allah showed Sulaiman alayhi salam Dajjal sitting on his throne. When Sulaiman died, the Qur'an says, ما ضلهم عن موته إلا دابة الأرض تأكل من سأته. The commentators of the Qur'an came to the conclusion almost universally, nearly all of them, that when Sulaiman alayhi salam died, no one knew that he was dead. And his body remained sitting on the throne for a long time. How long? For as long as it took some termites to start biting at the bottom of the staff. How many months will it take? How many years will it take for the termites to bite enough at the bottom of the staff so that the staff would lose its balance? It wouldn't take 1 week, it would take much more than that. And when the staff lost its balance, then the body collapsed. And only then did the people know that Suleiman died. You have to forgive me. My language is harsh. I say that is nonsense. Yes, you have to forgive me. But I make no apologies for saying that qualifies as nonsense. Yet it's there in all the tafsir. This is why Allah says, I want you to think. I send the Qur'an لِقَوْمِ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. Don't follow the trodden path. Accept everything which has come from before. Don't do that. Critically assess it. And if it is correct, you accept it. But if it is nonsense, you say it is nonsense, and I say this is nonsense. How could a king be sitting on his throne for the whole day without eating anything, without drinking anything? Doesn't he have to go to the toilet? Huh? Doesn't he have to go to the bedroom and sleep? And you expect me, that Allah gave me a sense in my head, and I will accept that the king can remain on his throne sitting for weeks and months and maybe years, and no one knew he was dead? That is nonsense. And the Qur'an cannot have nonsense. So then what does the Qur'an tell us? That is a part of this subject of how to prepare for Akhirul Zaman with the system of time, that is connected with it. Sulaiman alayhi salam not only asked that none should inherit my kingdom after me, but also the same ayah means that there could never be another kingdom like mine. So Allah responded by ordering the jinn, the shayateen of the jinn, to work for him. And if he orders them and they don't obey him, they will be punished with terrible punishment. So long as he was alive, the shayateen had to work for him, shayateen of the jinn. Some of these shayateen were in chains. وَآخَرِينَ مُقَرَّنِينَ فِي الْأَصْفَادِ. When he died, everybody knew he was dead, except the jinn. Except the jinn. Why did the jinn not know that he was dead? Answer: because the jinn could see him still alive. Yes, even though he was dead, the jinn was seeing him walking and talking and eating and drinking. How is it possible? Today, you used to have a prime minister named Tunku Abdul Rahman. Today, you can turn on your television, you can see him. You could hear him. Yeah. Indonesia, once upon a time, had a great leader that Indonesia has now forgotten. His name was Ahmad Sukarno. Huh? But you could turn on your TV, you could see Ahmad Sukarno today, but at that time. How was it possible that the jinn could see him alive when he was dead? Answer: the Jasad was sitting on the throne. وَلَقَدْ فَتَنَّا سُلَيْمَانَ وَأَلْقَيْنَا عَلَى كُرْسِيهِ جَسَدٍ. The Jasad was sitting on the throne, and the Jasad was holding on to the staff. But the staff had a miraculous quality in it. The staff of Musa, alayhi salam, throw it on the ground, it became a serpent, a snake. The staff of Musa, strike the water, and then the Red Sea parted. The staff of Musa, strike the rock, and then 12 streams of water came out. So the staff has a miraculous quality in it. The shirt of Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam. Take my shirt, throw it on my father, Yaqub alayhi, his eyesight will return. The messengers of Allah are like that. So the staff has something in it called a minsa'a, with a sin, minsa'a. And so long as the staff has the minsa'a, whoever is holding the staff, listen carefully, can intervene in time, can bring about forward and backward movement in time, and can therefore show Suleiman still alive. But this is the corruption of time. This is changing time. And in Surah At-Tawbah, Allah warns, He says, إِنَّمَا النَّسِيءُ زِيَادَةٌ لِلْكُفْرِ, that the corruption of time is the road to ever increasing kufr. So now then, who or what is the Jasad answer? The Jasad is Dajjal. And Dajjal is still holding on to the staff at this time. And Dajjal is able to intervene in time with backward and forward movement of time. And therefore I can say to you today from Ampang that there is a tomorrow coming when the world is going to witness things happening in the world of time that at this time we don't see. It's coming tomorrow because he's still holding on to the stuff and he can still intervene in time. And that means it's the danger of attack in the world and the system of time is going to become more and more dangerous. And that is why in Akhir Zaman you need protection. And the best protection of all, which will bring the heart back to the system of time Allah has created, is to recite the Qur'an the way that Allah has recited it. Sometimes your juz is only one surah, but you never ever leave a surah incomplete. Never. And you should always try to recite your juz before you sleep. Sometimes even Nabi Muhammad والسلام, too busy, and he could not get time to recite his juz at the time of Fajr. Sometime with me as well. And any time you do not recite your juz at the time of Fajr, Shaitan makes it difficult all through the day. All through the day you cannot get time to recite the Qur'an. Until when the time comes to sleep and you're tired, then you remember, I've not recited the Qur'an as yet. But Nabi Muhammad والسلام, would not sleep until he had recited his juz of the Qur'an. Yes. Very seldom does it ever happen with me that I'm too tired and too sleepy and I have to sleep without reciting my juz. And the next day I have to recite two juz. This very seldom happens, very seldom happens. Nearly every day I recite my juz before Fajr or immediately after Fajr. And when I do that, the rest of the day passes very nicely. But sometimes I do not have the time, or I'm too tired. I'm an old man now. And I cannot recite my juz at the time of Fajr. Then I have to try to find time during the day to recite it, but before I go to sleep. This is what I leave with you tonight, that the danger of the system of time is the greatest danger of all in Akhirul Zaman. The corruption of the system of time which came from Allah. And if you abandon and you betray the system of time which has come from Allah, the punishment is that you will perceive time moving very fast, faster and yet faster. And when you perceive time moving faster and yet faster, that is the evidence that you have abandoned the system of time that Allah has given and you're following Dajjal. So do please read my book, the Qur'an and the Moon, and follow the recitation I've given there. And inshallah, you will recite the Quran every month. But more important, vastly more important, is to get your children. When the child is 7 years of age, the child should be able to recite the Quran. When the child has reached 10 years of age, the child should be able to khatam the Quran every month. And when you finish, you start again. And when you finish, you start again. And that child will keep on reciting the Quran all through his life. And the Quran will protect that child from ever becoming a politician. All right. So now we can have a question and answer session, inshallah.
Kita terbuka majlis untuk soalan pertanyaan kepada Syekh. Kita ada mic sebelah sana, boleh bangun dan kemukakan soalan, silakan. Bismillah.
Yeah.
Yang lain boleh standby soalan kepada ya?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Saya tanya soalan bahasa Melayu, nanti Haji tolong translatekan bahasa Inggeris ya. Soalan yang agak kontroversi sebab berdasarkan video yang Sheikh Imran Hosein pernah bercakap tentang haji pada tahun ini agak istilahnya tak sah lah. Mengapa? Apakah alasannya?
Sheikh mentioned about your video recently about the Hajj, that this year Hajj was not accepted. Please explain.
The government of Saudi Arabia is a very strange government. We say that the baby is born only when you can see the baby. Huh? When the baby leaves the mother, then the baby is born. The government of Saudi Arabia says no. Once there's evidence that the baby is there in the mother's belly, the baby is already born. Strange, huh? So we say the moon is born only when we can see the moon. The government of Saudi Arabia says no. Once there's scientific evidence that the moon is born, it's born. You don't have to look for the moon anymore. But the definition of hilal in the Quran is the hilal that you see. Begin the fast when you see the moon, and end the fast and end and have Eid when you see the moon. So the government of Saudi Arabia is misguided, and so they give that the month of Zulhajj has begun even when the moon is not yet seen. So the day which is assigned for the Hajj is the wrong day. But our people, because they have PhDs in being sheep and cattle, that's what they are today. They don't care. Our people don't care for knowledge anymore. Our people don't care for the Qur'an anymore. Our people have more important things to think about than the Qur'an and truth. So once the Saudis announced that's the moon, that's the day of the Hajj, they said, that's our Hajj. We don't care about you. But it's a bogus Hajj. It's a bogus Hajj because it's being performed on the wrong day. And it will not be accepted by Allah. Okay? And even here in Malaysia, don't depend upon the authority when Allah has given you eyes. Look for the moon. Establish your connection. You have telephone. You can have someone in Penang, someone in JB, all around the country. You have a network. Did anyone see the moon? Okay? And when no one has seen the moon, then you announce that tomorrow will be the last day of the month. Forget the authorities, because they will never guide you correctly.
Ada apa-apa lagi soalan? Sila kemukakan.
Another one in the...
Ada muslimah lagi. Muslimah. Bagi mic muslimah.
Okay, Assalamualaikum Sheikh. Can a single woman do her Hajj without mahram by joining female group led by a Sheikh?
I prefer that such a question pertaining to law should be given to someone who is a scholar of law, a mufti, inshallah. But I need to address one more thing. How does a woman recite the Qur'an to complete the Qur'an in 1 month when she has the monthly menstrual period? The men have no excuse, but the women have an excuse. The answer is that when her menstrual period is completed, if she has sufficient time left before the end of the month, and she can increase the number of juz she recites and complete the Qur'an within 1 month, then go ahead and do it. But if she cannot do that, then you continue to recite the Qur'an into the new month. You must never stop the recitation of the Qur'an until you khatam the Qur'an. Never stop. Go on until you khatam the Qur'an. When you khatam the Qur'an in the new month, then you will continue to recite for the rest of the month from wherever you wish in the Qur'an until the new moon is seen, and then you'll begin the Qur'an once again. Any more questions? Yes?
Yes, I have something in my head. You said in the end of time, the war will be between the Muslim and the Russia, the combining and fighting with Israel. So, with in your opinion, which part of the Muslim world will be joining Russia with? Will us Malaysia be a part of that, or just the countries within the Arab states? Or
The question is, I have mentioned that Muslims are going to enter into friendship and alliance with Russia. What the Qur'an says, is that there is a surah of the Qur'an entitled Surah Rum. And Rome is a Christian Rome. The Byzantine Empire in Constantinople, that is Rome. And Rome, at the time of the Quran, already believed in the Trinity and was already worshipping Jesus as the second person in the Trinity. That's Rome. But Allah intervened to help Rome, for Rome to be victorious. غلبت الروم في أدنى الأرض وهم من بعد غلبهم سيغلبون في بضع سنين. Allah intervened to help Rome, for Rome to be victorious. And when Rome was victorious, Allah said that we, the Muslims, we celebrated. وَيَوْمَئِذٍ يَفْرَحُ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. So because we celebrated when they were victorious, that makes us friends and allies. Friends and allies. This is there in the Quran. But Allah says that Rome will be victorious twice. Min qabl wa min ba'd. You recite Surah Rum, do you? Huh? No? Surah Rum, yes. Lillahi al-amr. With Allah is the command for victory. Min qabl wa min ba'd. Before and after. Two victories. So one victory already came when Byzantine Empire defeated Persia. And the second victory has not as yet come. And today Rome is no longer in Constantinople, Rome is in Moscow. So there is a victory coming for Russia, with which Allah will help Russia to be victorious. And when Allah helps Russia to be victorious, we will celebrate. I don't know about the politicians, I'm talking about the rest of us. We will celebrate. Okay? Now then, I think it is in Surah Baqarah or Ali Imran. Help me somebody. Al-kafiruna ba'duhum awliya'u ba'd. No, this is Surah Al-Anfal. إِلَّمْ تَفْعَلُوا تَكُنْ فِتْنَةٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَفَسَادٌ كَبِيرٌ. Surah Al-Anfal. The kuffar make alliances. And if you do not do so, if you also do not make alliances, there will be great fasad and fitna on earth. So with whom should we make an alliance? Answer, with Rome. Because Allah has favored Rome. This is the basis in the Quran for a Muslim alliance with Russia. Anyone wants to comment on it? Anyone differs with me? Next question. No more questions, Salat? Yeah.
Sheikh, I have one question. There's a podcast by the name of One Path, which an Arab ustaz, eminent ustaz, claim that Israel will win big and most of the Arab countries will fall and finally Medina will be destroyed. So I just want to ask, what's your opinion in this statement?
What's your question? Oh, you didn't hear too.
Podcast by the name of One Path. So that in that podcast, there's what you call Arab what you call eminent sheikh claims that in this crisis between Israel and the Arab countries, then Israel will win big, and finally most of the Arab countries will fall, and finally Medina will be destroyed before the Armageddon. So what do you think about this opinion?
What's the name of the scholar?
What's the name of the scholar? It doesn't mention the name of the scholar.
All right, I am not sure whether I'm answering your question or not, because you asked the question twice and I still could not get the answer, get the question properly. So, let's see. What's going to happen in Gaza? What's going to happen in the Holy Land? Will Israel destroy the Palestinians? Will Medina be destroyed? And so on. Allah says in Surah Al-Isra that Banu Israel will commit fasad on earth twice. لَتُفْسِدُنَّ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَّتَيْن, twice. And the two times already occurred before the Qur'an was revealed. But there's a third one now. There's a third one now. So why does the Qur'an say twice? Answer: the first two were Banu Israel. This one is not Banu Israel. That's the answer. If this is not Banu Israel, who is committing fasad now? Answer: if you study the Qur'an the way the Qur'an should be studied, forgive me for knocking the table. I'm frustrated. I'm teaching this subject for so long, and yet people don't accept it. What can I do? If you betray the Qur'an, you deserve the fate that awaits you. What can I do? Those who are committing fasad in the Holy Land today are Gog and Magog. Those who control power in Israel are Gog and Magog. Those who control power in modern Western civilization are Gog and Magog. But not only have we not studied the subject from the Qur'an, but it appears the situation is worse than that. We lack the capacity to even study the subject from the Qur'an. Something is wrong. Something is wrong with our scholars today, that we lack the capacity to even study the subject from the Qur'an. And when I teach it, they won't listen to me. If I don't like to use the term Hamas, I don't like it. I prefer to use the term the Islamic resistance. If the Islamic resistance had accepted that Gog and Magog today control power in Israel, if they had not followed the methodology of Hizb ut-Tahrir, which is a Palestinian movement, Hizb ut-Tahrir, and if they had studied the Qur'an the way the Qur'an ought to be studied, they'd know that Zulkarnain could not defeat Gog and Magog, even though Allah gave him power. So if Zulkarnain could not defeat Gog and Magog, can you do it? No. But Gog and Magog can be contained and be rendered harmless. And that's what Zulkarnain did, and that is what Russia is doing now. So what they have to do in the Holy Land is to formulate a strategy of how to contain Gog and Magog rather than to destroy Gog and Magog.